Buck, I don't know if you saw this over the weekend, but we kind of mocked her some on Friday. Alyssa Milano, who supposedly is worth over $10 million, and her husband, who is a CAA agent, a guy who's making probably millions of dollars pretty regularly as a representative of the Hollywood elite. She was raising money for her son's 12-year-old baseball team to go to Cooperstown, New York. Now, you'll remember, Buck, and probably a lot of listeners will as well. I actually got to do this with my 12-year-old last year. I did the show from up in the Cooperstown, New York area. That's where the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame is. It's extraordinary. If your 12-year-old has an opportunity to go play in this tournament, I highly recommend it. A lot of you out there, 12-year-old baseball, travel ball. I know there are so many of you out there that are parents or grandparents in this universe. You know exactly of which I'm speaking. So it's not cheap, as you would imagine. The kids, the amount you have to pay, travel ball in general is not cheap. You have to work hard to give your kids the opportunity to do this. So, but Alyssa Milano has $10 million or more, lives in a house, as you mentioned, Buck. You went and interviewed her there, $4 or $5 million house in the LA area. Alyssa Milano, by the way, for those of you out there who are younger or way older, you may not be familiar with her. She was on Who's the Boss? That's when she initially became famous, and then she's been on other programs since.
She played Matrix's daughter in Commando as well, for those of you who are true
80s
action aficionados. Yeah.
And then she was on, wasn't she on, what was the Charmed? She was on Charmed, which is maybe where she is. Allie just immediately jumps in. Charmed! She was on Charmed! So, Allie, huge Charmed fan back in the day. So, Buck, she was trying to raise money for her son's Little League team to go and play in Cooperstown. And we pointed out, like, this is just so tone deaf. If you are fortunate enough to have substantial resources, more than what you need to take care of your family, I would hope that at times you would sometimes make gifts, do nice things for the people around you without needing to draw attention to it. Certainly, I would hope that if you are wealthy, you are not asking people who have way less money than you to fund the extracurricular activities of your kids. So she put up, like, trying to raise money. Buck, on Saturday, I saw it. There was like $794 outstanding. So I went and donated the remaining $794 for Alyssa Milano's Little League team to be able to go and play. And I said I only have one request for that $794 donation from me to get them to go to Cooperstown, New York. I said I just want the kids to all play in MAGA hats. Alyssa Milano obviously hates Donald Trump, super left-wing. They have not yet responded to my generous $794 donation or my request that they all play in MAGA hats. But Alyssa Milano, Buck, also drives a $200,000 Porsche. Some of you may say, okay, what's your larger
an electric
context here?
Porsche, Clay, because she cares about her carbon footprint. Thank you very much.
Is it really an do they have electric Porsches? I didn't even know those existed.
Yeah. Well, it's like, I think it's a hybrid, but yes.
So what I think is so interesting about this, Buck, and I would be curious if you would sign off on this. Some people say, okay, it's not that big of a deal.
All electric, just
all
checked.
Electric.
All Porsche, yep.
Okay. To me, this is the perfect distillation of the Hollywood elite mindset. It is, they want massive amounts of resources for themselves. And then they also want you to be making donations to allow them to have the lifestyle that they also want to even think about doing this. And I'll give you a mention here. Frank Siller, our friend who runs Tunnel to Towers, I think he's told this story on the radio before. But some people say, well, why does Frank Siller, Tunnel to Towers, why does he advertise with Clay and Buck? You advertised with Rush before. You guys have given over $5 million to Tunnel to Towers, by the way, which is an incredible amount. I'd encourage you, like we always say with Buck and myself, to join us and be able to make those donations. And why does he advertise on Fox News? And Frank will say, and I think it's just such an interesting window, and I think it ties in with this Alyssa Milano ridiculousness. Frank will point out that he's tried to raise money on CNN or MSNBC. Their viewers don't donate because they view it as the responsibility of the government to take care of them. They don't take individual responsibility to do things that make the world better. They all believe in collectivism. And some people say, oh, why would you donate? To me, it is just shining such a bright spotlight on her hypocrisy and doing it in a funny way. She still hasn't responded. She clearly could pay for the entire team to go to Cooperstown, New York. She could probably pay for the entire team to fly on a private jet to Cooperstown, New York. And yet she wants you, people who have far less resources than her, to take care of her responsibilities, but she's not willing to make the same sacrifice herself. And to me, it just is, and it ties in with that tunnel to towers angle.
Yeah.
The people who do the best and give the most often draw the least amount of attention to themselves and believe in individual responsibility as opposed to sort of this collective responsibility.
I also think that virtue signaling leftist elites sometimes like to play this game of, yeah, I'm in the struggle too, you know? So she's going through the motions of, yeah, we need to raise money for my son's little league team, you know, just like everybody else. And it's like costume play. It's like they're pretending to be somebody that, you know, that's a totally legitimate thing. If, you know, if you're, you know, the average American family and you're trying to get a trip together and everything else is fun. She's not the average American family, right?
Yes.
But she wants to present this, the pretense of, yeah, I'm in the struggle just like all of you, because a lot of libs, these collectivist libs that you're talking about, Clay, they feel tremendous guilt too. They don't talk about it very much, but it's why they have a lot of the positions they do, because they're trying to make up for an insecurity. Listen, all your lib neighbors, all your lib family members, I'm just going to say it, you know, your second cousin, you know, who's decided that he loves Joe Biden and, you know, voted for Obama twice and all this stuff. Ultimately, they take the positions they do at some level, I think. I mean, this is my theory, because they think that it makes other people think better of them. They don't actually think about what the actual positions will be, or what the policy agenda is going to be. It's just about, I do this because I'm the good person. I do this because, you know, I'm one of the smart people or the cool people. It's branding. It's like individual personal branding. And a part of it as well for, I think, rich Democrats is, yeah, I'm in the struggle too. Like, I know what it's like, you know, because they always advocate for the working class publicly. They pretend to, at least. And then I've been to Alyssa Milano's house. She lives in like I don't know, like a $6 or $7 million, you know,
Gated
mansion
community.
in a gated community, 30 minutes from downtown LA or from LA. And you got to go through armed security and a big gate to even get within half a mile of where she lives. So, you know, she's not down with the struggle is my point, but they like to pretend.
Isn't it amazing how many people who don't support border security and don't believe in a wall live behind a wall? I mean, even Joe Biden, his beach house is behind a wall. The number of people who in their own private lives have armed security and a wall to protect them from anybody being able to get into their community, that don't support a wall at the border, that don't support funding the police, that supported defunding the police. They live such lies that I think the hypocrisy is tough to ignore. By the way, Ali, invite Alyssa Milano. I'm sure she won't come, but invite her to come on the show to talk about any issue that she wants. She has not responded, Buck. I paid now for the trip, and she has not responded to my generous offer and money. All I needed was for the team to play in MAGA hats. So if you want to be entertained a little bit, you can go read about that. I did it on Saturday, and I did it because I just wanted to point out the hypocrisy of what she advocates for versus the reality of her life. Remember, didn't she show up dressed up as a what's the show where everybody like Elizabeth the show where everybody wear the Handmaid's Tale, where everybody wears they all dressed up for like handmaidens for the Kavanaugh hearings. She was there on the front row leading that charge. And meanwhile, she can't even pay for her own kids to go to play in a Little League baseball tournament. She wants all of you to give money for them to be able to do
Think
that.
about the level of delusion and mental illness you'd have to dress up like the Handmaiden or Handmaid's Tale or whatever, to show up at Brett Kavanaugh's Supreme Court confirmation hearings based on the obviously absurd. And remember, there were many other allegations of rape that were made that were so crazy and so easily disprovable that Democrats pretended that they weren't even happening because they knew that it would undermine the three obviously false ones that they did come forward with. But I mean, imagine being that gullible and that obscene in your political beliefs and what you think, that you would show up. This is a guy who like coaches girls basketball. He's a dad. He's a husband. Every woman who'd ever worked for him said that he was incredibly encouraging and fair and didn't have a sexist bone in his body. And they tried to ritually sacrifice
Yes.
him in front of the entire country. It was demonic. It was the stuff of Moloch what they did to Brett Kavanaugh.
Buck, they tried to get him kicked off of being able to be a volunteer basketball coach for his little girls' team.
Yeah, as
They
if
didn't
he's
just
like
try to
as
strip
if
him
he's
off-
like a sex offender. I mean,
Yeah.
it was insane what they did. I will never forgive them for that. I will never forget that. I will never forgive Kamala Harris for it. I should be even harder than I am, I think, on what an atrocious politician Harris is. I just have to remind myself of that. But yeah, Alyssa Milano was part of that whole mob that was trying to destroy him. I mean, that was the whole point of it, to destroy him.
You know how hard it is to even get coaches to coach Little League teams these days? I mean, tons of you out there listening, people are so busy, they don't necessarily want to even take on the responsibility of doing it. And they tried not only to keep him off the Supreme Court, which was indefensible, they tried to tell him he couldn't coach an 11-year-old girls basketball team.
Did I tell you how I ended up coaching JV high school soccer at my high school in New York because the headmaster called me and he's like, "Look, we had somebody who said they could do it and now they can't. Something came up. So either you coach or we don't have a JV team." It was a week before the season started. That was it. So I said, "Well,
I mean, my wife coached soccer this past fall, Buck, because they were going to do away with the team. On my 9-year-old wanted to play soccer, and they didn't have a coach. And they said, unless somebody signs up right now, we're going to disband this team because the guy who was going to coach moved."
And I'll tell you something. I mean, other than doing radio, the most fun job, I mean, and just pure enjoyment I've ever had in terms of just joy was definitely coaching soccer. It was great fun. I mean, we also went like 10-1-1 or something, NBD, city semifinals. I mean, whatever, who's counting?
That's pretty good. Yeah, I've coached basketball, I've coached baseball, I've coached soccer now for all my boys at some point.
What do you think
in
you're
time.
the best coach at coaching? What are you the best at coaching?
Well, it depends on age, right? Because the kids are now like they're better than me.
If
like,
you had to
when
coach
you're coaching like
a high
8-year-olds.
school level team, what would be the best sport for you to coach? Team sport, although tennis doesn't count.
Oh, that's a good question. I think probably baseball. I mean, it's hard. I think it's harder to screw up baseball than it is football or basketball. I think there's a less, and baseball guy's going to be fired up at me now, but I think there's less decision making from a coach that screws things up. Whereas in football, like, I mean, if you're not a great football coach, your team's a disaster. And same thing in basketball if you don't prep them very much.